An author, politician, and former international civil servant, Shashi Tharoor straddles several worlds of experience. Currently a second-term Lok Sabha MP representing the Thiruvananthapuram constituency and chairman of the Parliamentary Standing Committee on External Affairs. He has previously served as Minister of State for Human Resource Development and Minister of State for External Affairs. Today, the man who is always in the news joins us as guest anchor on our weekend special of To The Point.
Hello and welcome to the weekend special of To The Point. Today I'm your guest anchor. But before I begin, I'd like to start with a solemn promise that I will be neutral and non-partisan on the anchor seat and give everyone an equal chance to speak. I'm delighted that we have with us a very interesting panel. Sudhanshu Trivedi, BJP spokesperson, Salman Soz, Congress spokesperson, and Karuna Nandi, advocate. And I'm going to start with Karuna. Our topic today is freedom of expression. Is freedom of expression under threat in today's India? And Karuna, before we start getting into the entire debate, we need to understand what we're talking about. You're a lawyer, you worked in this domain. I know that we don't have in India, for example, the equivalent of the American First Amendment, which guarantees absolute free speech rights. What do we understand by freedom of expression here? If you could lay out how it works in the context of the Indian Constitution and our system.
So Article 19(1) says that everyone has the freedom to speak, and it's only if it is restricted in very particular ways can that freedom be restricted. So there are about 8 categories that you have to fall within to restrict that freedom. There has to be a law as passed by Parliament. So as we saw in the national anthem case, for example, the courts can't suo moto restrict that freedom on their own. And then the third thing is that, and this is the most significant, and this is where actually most governments fall, this particular regime in particular, the restrictions must be reasonable, and that reasonableness is tested on the anvil of constitutionality as sort of articulated in a large number of judgments. You know, as you were saying, Mr. Tharoor, that the analogies with the US jurisprudence are limited. This is not entirely the case. So it's a bit of a myth that freedom of expression is absolute in the US, because, for example, even a very good comparison of this is between the Shreya Singhal judgment, where quite brilliantly Justice Nariman has compared our jurisdiction to the United States and found many sort of points of contact and points of parallel. But we're also seeing a lot of jurisprudence coming out of the African court. So, for example, the striking down of criminal defamation that we so far in India have unfortunately failed to do.
Sudhanshu, we've heard Karuna lay out that under our constitution, you don't have absolute freedom of speech because there are certain criteria under which freedom of speech can be restricted. From your point of view, and you are, after all, the ruling party in this country and in 21 of our states, do you believe that there are any grounds for further restrictions of freedom of expression, or are you happy with the existing legal order?
In my opinion, every country is having certain restrictions, whether written or non-written, because there has to be a distinct difference between the criticism and the abuse. India has started a new tradition. India became the first country in the world to ban Salman Rushdie's satanic verses without any demand. So we have created a new narrative on the freedom of expression. And I would like to say one thing.
So you would say we should not have been banning any books?
No. I've already made it very clear that criticism and abuse should be distinctly different. But ours are such a civilization which is having such a benevolent view that we are ready to even abuse. For example, I would like to say precisely the Indian culture or the Hindu angle, which has been too much targeted these days on the issue of freedom of expression. The only culture in the world which allows discussion on religious texts In any other culture, you can have sermon, precept, only one thing. Here there is a tradition of Shastra. And you know, I will quote one thing. In Indian tradition, Vedas are considered as absolute holy book. But there are certain sects in Hinduism which say, Trayaha Vedasya Kartara, Dhurto Bhand Nishachara. There are just 3 persons who read Vedas, scoundrels, rascals and others. Can you imagine that any sect of a religion can say that the holy book of that religion is a rubbish book and still remain parts of that? And even the Charvak says, no God, no soul, no morality. Just eat, drink and be merry. Still remain parts. So that was such a benevolent tradition. And that has been targeted. Why? Because of one-sided angle. Because, finally I will conclude. In 90s, when Mr. Arjun Singh opens an exhibition in which these type of books are presented, which says in Ramayana, the Ram and Sita were brothers and sisters. And when it is opposed, it is freedom of expression. But when M.F. Hussain made the nude pictures of Hindu goddesses, when it is opposed, no, this is the freedom of expression. On the other hand, if somebody like the Minister of UP, Mr. Haji Yaqub Qureshi says 10 crore rupees for those who will bring me the head of that Danish cartoonist who has made an objectionable cartoon about Prophet Muhammad, they should not be there. But then he remains as minister, remains as MLA, and no criticism for any party, SP, BSP or Congress, whosoever.
I may have an issue with some of your examples, but your point is no double standards.
No double standards. It
Salman,
should be absolute neutral.
How do you react to this argument that the entire debate is vitiated by double standards?
To some extent, double standards do exist. They exist everywhere, and they exist in India. But I want to tell Sudhanshu Trivedi ji, that if Salman Rushdie's banning of that book was wrong, which I agree, it was wrong, then hounding out M.F. Hussain was also wrong. Now, you speak of double standards, and then, of course, your party is full of them. And I think that will not take us anywhere. What we should be discussing is, how do we expand the freedom of expression in this country? Because yes, I agree, this whole idea of absolute freedom of expression and all that, maybe with time we'll get there. But how do we actually advance this debate? That is the question. Now, you can talk about history. I can talk about, I wrote a piece, by the way, a few months back about Hindu Sarkar, and I kind of said they should let them have it, no problem, right? If somebody says something against Prophet Muhammad, I say let them say it. It will not diminish the Prophet. That's my view. I want us to expand that, if All India, I don't know what they call All India Bhakti, something like that. If they say something, let them do it. How does it actually affect us? So I would say that why doesn't the BJP join us in saying we will expand freedoms, because that is good for this country. Why? Because we need innovation in this country. We need knowledge, we need debate. Without that, we cannot catch up with other countries.
So censorious attitudes would stifle creativity.
Absolutely.
One example I would like to quote. As far as the religious sentiment is concerned, we should be sensitive. If there was a satanic reversal, but not in terms of text, it was some sort of novel type of thing. But even that, the indirect remark should not be there. But M.F. Hussain has categorically said that this is this Hindu goddess, this is that Hindu goddess. That is not. And one more thing, another book of Salman Rushdie is banned in India, Midnight Children.
No,
it's not banned in India.
So why they are criticized? And one more thing, I would like to give an example. In 94-95, there was a Marathi play going on, and that was not allowed to perform. It was regarding Nathuram Godse.
Me Nathuram
Godse boltoy. So I am saying that on the criticism of politics, we become so much sensitive. And on the criticism of religion, in one aspect only, lopsidedly, we try to become extra benevolent.
Salman, you want to chip in on this?
Nathuram Godse is a special case of essentially the first terrorist around our independence, who killed the father of the nation. If people want to glorify him, I ask you, there are countries that ban such display of, to somebody's terrorist today. Tomorrow people will be, glorifying terrorists in other places. Is that what we want? I think, the other part is you say that, M.F. Hussein's painting was directly talking about some goddess, and then Salman Rushdie was basically using some examples. Who's to decide? This will never end. If we go in that direction, we'll never end this
Okay,
debate.
but Salman, I want to bring Karan and Nundi back into this conversation. We were talking about the US and India at the beginning, and we know that there's a famous US judge who said that freedom of speech does not extend to the right to shout fire in a crowded theatre. Now, the logic is that if the theatre is crowded and you shout fire, people will stampede, lots of people will lose their lives, there'll be damage that outweighs the significance of the right to shout fire. Now, one of the arguments some people have made in the Indian context is, and Sudhanshu partly made it now, is that there is so much sensitivity on certain issues, particularly those to do with religion, that to say something that offends those sensitivities would be like shouting fire in a crowded theatre. How do you react to that as a lawyer, Karuna?
The Brandenburg judgment is something that academics, judges, lawyers in the United States are thinking about very carefully now. Because if you look at hate speech and fake news around the world, this is something that's rising, and it's putting not just all our freedoms in danger in terms of discrimination. There's hate speech against minorities, there's hate speech against women, there's also very serious problem of fake news. It's also something that doesn't quite work in a environment in which speech is completely unmediated by either editors or anyone else. Now, this is on the one hand an excellent thing, because it means that this is the greatest democratization of speech that has ever happened. It also means that and I am going to make this conversation a little bit less polite, that people like Sudhanshu ji can come on a national platform like this and with complete, without being checked, say things like the Last Temptation of Christ was banned in the United States, that the Prophet Muhammad film was, I think it was called The Innocence of Muslims, perhaps that's the one he's talking about. Well, the thing is that it's completely untrue. May I just put that forward? The second thing is that, when people speak of sensitivities, there is a huge slippery slope there, because everyone has sensitivities, and this government has failed completely, for example, to check the Karni Sena that was proposing to cut off the lead actress's nose when Padmavat was banned in various BJP states. So, at the moment we are in a bit of a crisis, and I think all political parties, and and let me also say that the Congress, Mr. Tharoor, doesn't have a great track record on this in the past. Now I am delighted to see, for example, when there was the Kudankulam protest, right, against a nuclear power plant, where we did not know when the last seismic event happened, when the last earthquake happened, and the local fisherfolk and the local women and children were protesting, and against 7,000 of them, there were sedition cases. Now we see that the Congress has, I think, woken up because of this polarization to the fact, and it's become front and center political issue. We saw Rahul Gandhi espousing this, taking it up, fighting against criminal defamation, and this is a wonderful thing. I think what we have to realize, and taking into account also what Sudhanshu ji has been saying, that you don't want double standards. Across the board, we need to realize that these are the pipes of our democracy. And it operates both ways, that we have to safeguard these pipes. At the moment, our laws are very broad. They are being used against minorities, and they need to be limited. And it is different when it's against the majority and a historically discriminated population.
Okay, both our panelists here want to react to that. Salman, you had raised your hand first when Congress was mentioned.
I want to just advance that argument a little bit more. Just recently, there was a TV program, which it's a fictional program, which talks about of our former Prime Minister, Rajiv Gandhi ji. Now, what happened? What did our president say? When you talk about sensitivity, think about the sensitivity of a son whose father died for this country, who was killed. And what did our president say? That let them do their work. This is artistic expression. This does not in any way diminish, the memory of Rajiv Gandhi ji. Please join us to expand these freedoms, because we are in we're in opposition today, you could be in opposition tomorrow. And then we should come up with systems, come up with laws that expand our freedoms, because that is going to be ultimately, that is what is going to help us catch up with countries like China. But being too careful about sensitivities and all that, there's no end to it. It's a slippery slope.
That's
Yes,
right.
as
So
far
should
as
we be
we-
appeasing the sensitive?
No,
all the
as
time?
far as we are concerned, we are the most benevolent. You can never heard anything about anywhere in the world ki somebody can say Prime Minister ki boti kaat dunga and there should be no reaction.
No, but incitement to
And one more
violence is
thing.
against illegal.
Instant.
Incitement
That's
to
why I'm
violence,
saying.
boti
He
kaatna,
still,
ya kisi ka naak
he
ko
is a
kaatna, that's not
respected vice
justified.
president of Congress party in Uttar Pradesh. And Taslima Nasreen is not allowed to perform any press conference in Hyderabad and disturbed by both MIM and Congress MLAs. Now on the issue of US, I would just like to say there is one thing in which we are superior to US. Why? You cannot discuss breaking of US in any US TV channel. You could never heard of the prime accused of 9/11 like Mohammed Atta and Khalid Sheikh. There is some sympathy and some group is discussing that he was just halat ka mara and other things. But here you can have discussion about Yaqub Menon as a judicial killing and Afzal Guru was halat ka mara. And finally, I would like to say one thing, as he has mentioned about the history and going back. As far as Nathuram Godse is concerned, I can say with full firmness that whatever he has done is condemnable. It was wrong. But if you want to use the today's terminology there that he was the first terrorist or Atankwadi, then I'd like to say that when this country was formed, it was 1 million people lost their life by lynching of mobs. 20 million people shifted their home by lynching of mobs. This is the biggest exodus in the documented history of mankind. So the tryst of destiny of Jawaharlal Nehru was on the Lynchistan, if you are saying today. So in my opinion,
wasn't
don't try to
advocating.
portray today's terminology in the historical perspective.
But-
if you say that, then
but
it was
Sudhanshu-
Lynchistan when we
No, but
got independence.
Sudhanshu ji, the greatest tribute to those who died then would be to actually do the opposite of what happened then. That is where we want to be. We are in 2018. If you want to pay tribute to those who died at the hands of lynch mobs, whether they were Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, then the greatest tribute would be to expand the freedom so that this doesn't happen.
And that's what I'm saying.
We should show intolerance to lynchings and that kind of expression. We should not be garlanding people. You see, I must say this, Sudhanshu ji, I really like you, you know that, right? I came into the studio, I hugged you, you hugged me back because this was a mutual embrace. You know, there was no dikhawa because the TV cameras were not on. But the fact of the matter is that today's BJP is forcing decent people, and there are many decent people in BJP. It's forcing decent people in the BJP to do indecent things. And that is what we should be against. Freedom of expression is important for this country, for the progress of this country, and we must expand that.
On the
Sudhanshu, yes, you-
on lynching, finally, I would like to say, as far as that is concerned, in 1984, whether it was Sajjan Kumar or Jagdish Titor, they were made MPs and ministers and others. So garlanding is a less.
Now
For
we're
that,
getting
even
away
regret, even it was regretted by the minister, but for making them MP and ministers was never regretted. And finally, I would like to conclude. The ethos of freedom of expression was. I will quote Kabir. Kabir has criticized both. For Hindus, he has ridiculed the idol worship. He said कि पाहन पूजे हरि मिले तो मैं पूजूं पहाड़ ताते ये चक्की भली पीस खाए संसार. Means if it is just by worshipping you can say an idol, then it is better to have this mountain. It is having more stone. But
he sounds like a charwak.
but on this same side,
Yeah.
he has also said कि काकड़ पाथर जोड़ के मस्जिद दई बनाए और ताचड़ी मुल्ला बाग दे का बहिरा भयो खुदाए. If he has spoken in today, फतवा जारी हो गया होता जनाब और पता नहीं किस किस ने उनके सर के ऊपर वो कर दिया होता. That's why be with the India's great tradition of neutral criticism and neutral freedom of speech, not the lopsided one.
Yeah, Salman, go ahead.
No,
Brief-
just on this, Sudhanshu ji, when somebody issues a fatwa, we all fight back. We do. We criticize that. You should also join in. That is what we should do. We should join hands with that.
Qureshi, have you removed them from the government? He was MLA, he was minister, he continued, no action was taken.
I think, thank you, Sudhanshu ji.
The voters have taken.
Your examples are all about this is happening, now we'll do this. I think that is not going to advance India. That is my point.
No, he has not even regretted his statement.
No, but look, the larger issue surely is that we have to worry about how we protect the freedoms all of us cherish in this country and how we can enlarge the space for them. You have suggested, Sudhanshu ji, that we are actually very tolerant. And if that is the case, we should back that up with government action as well. Yet I see, for example, a couple of months ago, Ghaziabad police arrested a councillor because he posted a photo of Adityanath that was not flattering on his Facebook page. We have a medical practitioner arrested in Madhya Pradesh in March for posting a picture of a sadhu buying meat. In April, we have the Delhi BJP issuing a complaint against Arvind Kejriwal for calling the Election Commission Dhritarashtra. And of course, we have had overall, I'm not blaming anyone in particular, 11 deaths and 46 attacks on journalists in India this year alone. So the question that comes up is, are we doing all we can as institutions of state and government to protect freedom of expression in our society?
That's all started. You have missed one example, Aseem Trivedi, who was taken action.
Exactly.
Mamta Banerjee has given.
The cartoonist.
So, in my opinion, there should be a refrain that the freedom of speech should be properly expressed. But in my opinion, on the issue of faith and other thing, the people should also try to put certain refrain. Again, I would like to conclude with a sentence. There should be a distinct difference in a healthy criticism and abuse.
Fair enough.
Because today in social media it has become too much. Whether it is against a person, it can be you, me or he.
Very often
there can be very often abuse and a very derogatory language is being used.
Very often. Salman,
that
one
cannot be termed as
sentence and
freedom of
then
speech.
one sentence on Karan.
I think we are abused all the time, Sudhanshuji. We know it, Shashi is, I am, we all are, But that doesn't mean, with this whole idea that faiths, we should have some special dispensation by which we should be sensitive. What we should be saying is that we should persuade people to have a positive discourse, but we cannot put any limits because who's going to be the judge of that?
Okay.
That is the problem.
Thank you. Final word from you, Karuna. We've had I think more or less a consensus, and we have challenges to freedom of speech. We want to expand the space for it. In terms of the law, are there any amendments you feel are required in our legal system? We have to be very brief. We're running out of time.
Absolutely. In the case that is pending in the Supreme Court on this panopticon of regulating people in social media, in public space, online in particular, the government should concede. And the government should concede that they made a mistake and roll back on that. The government should stop prosecuting lawyers and journalists and others, where there is, should stop supporting those prosecutions where there are speech issues.
Okay.
The government needs to, as soon as possible, start looking at, and not just in Karnataka, but in other states where people are killed for being rationalists. In speech issues across the board, there are shoulds. We should all be polite, but let us make a difference between politeness and criminality.
Thank you very much, Karun Anandi, Salman So, Sudhanshu Trivedi. We've been discussing freedom of expression, which is, of course, what all media should be about. It's your freedom. It's a freedom not just of politicians to express their views, but of every concerned Indian citizen to have the right to have a say in what our country is all about and which direction our country is heading in. So with those words, thank you very much. You've been watching To The Point.
Thanks for watching the video. For more such news and updates, please like, share and subscribe to India Today. Also check out our other great videos from our channel. We know you would love to.